On the morning of her 66th birthday, Lorraine Bennett woke before sunrise, just as she had done for most of her adult life. The quiet stillness of her Portland bungalow wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window while she tied on her favorite blue apron and smiled to herself. Birthdays had never been about gifts. For Lorraine, they were about sharing a meal with the people she loved. She had spent the previous evening planning every detail. A garlic-roasted pork loin rested in the refrigerator, seasoned to perfection. Sweet potatoes waited to be whipped into a creamy side dish, and fresh vegetables sat neatly arranged on the counter. The mahogany dining table, polished until it gleamed, was set with her finest china and crystal glasses. Every place setting reflected the care she poured into welcoming family into her home. Her son, Adrian, and his wife, Bianca, had been living with her for nearly 2 weeks. They claimed their kitchen renovation would only take a short time, and Lorraine had happily offered them a place to stay. She believed families should help one another whenever possible. As she basted the roast, she heard the front door open. Bianca entered without greeting her, balancing several shopping bags in one hand while scrolling through her phone with the other. She barely glanced toward the kitchen before dropping her expensive coat across Lorraine's favorite armchair. "Everything smells strong," Bianca remarked, wrinkling her nose. Lorraine laughed softly. "I hope that's a compliment. Dinner will be ready this evening. I wanted to make something special since it's my birthday." Bianca looked at the beautifully arranged dining room before checking the time on her smartwatch. "Oh, about that." Lorraine turned, sensing something unusual in her tone. "We've invited some colleagues over tonight for drinks and networking," Bianca explained casually. "The dining room has to stay available for them." Lorraine blinked. "I thought we were celebrating together." Bianca shrugged as though it were a minor inconvenience. "You can still eat, just take your dinner upstairs to your bedroom. It'll be quieter for you anyway." For a moment, Lorraine wondered if she had misunderstood. "My bedroom?" "Yes." Bianca smiled, though there wasn't a trace of kindness behind it. "Our guests need the main floor. It'll make a better impression." The words landed harder than Lorraine expected. She slowly turned toward Adrian, who had been standing near the hallway the entire time. He had heard every word. Instead of speaking, he stared at his phone with intense concentration. Avoiding his mother's eyes completely, the silence hurt more than Bianca's request. Lorraine had spent decades raising Adrian after losing her husband unexpectedly. She had worked long hours as an accountant, skipped vacations, and sacrificed countless comforts to ensure her son never went without opportunities. Now, on her own birthday, he couldn't even defend her. Without raising her voice, Lorraine untied her apron. "I see," she said quietly. She picked up her folded napkin and walked through the back door onto the porch. The crisp Oregon air cooled the sting gathering behind her eyes. She sat on the wooden porch swing for several minutes, listening to faint laughter drifting from inside the house as Bianca rearranged furniture for her guests. After a long silence, Lorraine unlocked her phone. She opened her banking app. Earlier that week, she had prepaid nearly $200 for an elegant dessert delivery to complete the birthday dinner. Her finger hovered over the screen. Then, without hesitation, she canceled the order. A confirmation notification appeared instantly. She smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but clarity. If no one intended to celebrate her, there was no reason to keep pretending. Before returning inside, Lorraine quietly switched off the oven. The roast would never finish cooking. Later that afternoon, Adrian wandered into the kitchen, looking confused. "Mom, what happened to dinner?" Lorraine calmly rinsed a teacup before placing it into the drying rack. "There won't be one." His forehead creased. "What about the birthday cake?" "I canceled it." "You canceled everything?" "Yes." He looked ready to ask another question, but stopped himself. For the first time in years, Lorraine noticed something she had ignored for far too long. Her son had become comfortable allowing other people to make difficult decisions for him, and every time he remained silent, someone else paid the price. This time, it would not be her. The next morning, Lorraine woke to the lingering smell of stale wine and leftover snacks. Empty glasses crowded the coffee table, crumbs covered the hardwood floor, and used napkins were scattered across the living room she had once taken pride in keeping spotless. The birthday she had looked forward for weeks had come and gone without a single candle or heartfelt wish. She quietly opened the windows, letting the cool morning breeze sweep away the stale air. As she wiped the kitchen counters, Adrian wandered in wearing yesterday's sweatshirt. Dark circles framed his eyes, and guilt was written across his face. He hesitated before speaking. "Mom, about last night." Lorraine continued cleaning without looking up. "I'm sorry things turned out the way they did." "The way they did?" she asked calmly. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. "Bianca has been under a lot of pressure at work. The gathering was important for her career. She didn't mean to make you feel left out." Lorraine finally faced him. "She asked me to eat alone in my bedroom inside my own house. I know. And what did you say?" Adrian lowered his eyes. "Nothing." His silence answered the question more honestly than words ever could. Lorraine folded the dish towel neatly and placed it beside the sink. "I understand." There was no anger in her voice anymore, only acceptance. Instead of preparing her usual Sunday breakfast of waffles, eggs, and fresh fruit for everyone, Lorraine picked up her canvas shopping bag and headed to the neighborhood farmer's market. For the first time in weeks, she wandered from stall to stall without rushing. She selected fresh raspberries, warm sourdough bread, handmade cheeses, fragrant herbs, and locally roasted coffee. Everything she bought was chosen for one person, herself. When she returned home, Bianca was standing in front of the refrigerator with an irritated expression. "Where's breakfast?" she asked. Lorraine calmly carried her groceries past the kitchen. "I'm not making breakfast today." Bianca frowned. "But Adrian told me you always cook on Sundays." "I've decided to change my routine." Without another explanation, Lorraine walked into her bedroom suite. Years earlier, she had installed a small refrigerator and coffee station beside her reading corner. She carefully arranged her groceries inside, placing each item exactly where she wanted it. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Bianca stood outside with folded arms. "So, what are we supposed to eat?" Lorraine smiled politely. "I'm sure you'll think of something." She closed the door before another word could be spoken. For the first time since they had moved in, Bianca was forced to prepare her own breakfast. The small change seemed insignificant, yet Lorraine knew it wasn't. Respect often disappeared one small expectation at a time. Now, she was quietly reclaiming those expectations. Over the following days, the atmosphere inside the house became noticeably different. Bianca continued treating the dining room like a private office. Her laptop, paperwork, coffee cups, and shopping catalogs spread across the table from morning until evening. Normally, Lorraine would have tidied everything before bedtime. This time, she walked past the clutter without touching a single item. If Bianca made the mess, Bianca could clean it. On Tuesday afternoon, Lorraine drove to a neighborhood hardware store. She purchased a heavy brass deadbolt for her bedroom door. An hour later, a retired handyman named Walter arrived to install it. The sound of his drill echoed through the hallway. Adrian returned from work just as Walter tightened the final screw. He stared at the newly installed lock. "Mom, why do you need that?" Lorraine handed Walter his payment before answering. "It gives me peace of mind, but we're family." She met her son's eyes. Family should respect one another's privacy. Bianca appeared in the hallway moments later. Her expression immediately hardened. "Seriously?" she asked. "A lock?" Lorraine nodded. "My bedroom is my personal space." Bianca laughed dismissively. "You act as though we're invading your privacy." Lorraine answered without raising her voice. "My privacy ended the moment I was told my own dining room no longer belonged to me." The hallway fell silent. For the first time, Bianca had no clever reply. She spun around and walked downstairs, her heels striking each stair with growing frustration. Adrian remained standing outside Lorraine's room. He looked as though he wanted to apologize again. Instead, he simply sighed. "I'm sorry things got this far." Lorraine gently turned the key inside the new lock. The solid click echoed through the quiet room. "So am I," she replied softly. As the door closed, she settled into her favorite chair beside the window with a warm cup of tea. For the first time in many days, she felt something she had almost forgotten: security, not because of the lock itself, but because she had finally begun protecting something far more valuable: her own dignity. By the middle of the week, the house had settled into an uncomfortable routine. Lorraine kept mostly to herself, preparing her meals early each morning before retreating to her bedroom with a book or a cup of tea. She no longer cleaned up after Adrian and Bianca, nor did she rearrange the dining room after Bianca's long workdays. If dishes remained in the sink overnight, they stayed there until the people who had used them finally washed them. It didn't take long for Bianca to notice. One afternoon, she walked into the kitchen, staring at the overflowing recycling bin and the stack of coffee mugs on the counter. "Lorraine," she called, "the kitchen's getting messy." Lorraine looked up from the newspaper she was reading. "I noticed." Bianca waited. "So, aren't you going to clean it?" Lorraine folded the newspaper carefully before answering. "I didn't make the mess, Hass." Bianca frowned. "You've always kept the house spotless. I've decided everyone should take care of what belongs to them." The younger woman rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath before walking away. Lorraine returned to her reading without another word. For the first time in years, she refused to solve problems that weren't hers. 2 days later, while watering the hydrangeas beside the back patio, Lorraine heard Bianca talking on the phone inside the kitchen. The window above the sink had been left open. Bianca laughed loudly. "No, Melissa, there's absolutely no rush," she said. "We're saving a fortune staying here." Lorraine paused, the garden hose still running over the flower bed. "The renovation doesn't even have to finish any time soon," Bianca continued. "This place is huge, it's free, and Lorraine never says no. We could stay another 3 months if we wanted." More laughter echoed through the window. "Adrian will handle her. He always does." Lorraine slowly turned off the water. She stood perfectly still. 3 months? She had welcomed them, believing they needed temporary help for only a few weeks. Now she realized they had no intention of leaving any time soon. The discovery stung, but it also answered several questions that had quietly troubled her. That evening, as she collected the mail from the front porch, she noticed an envelope addressed to Adrian from their contractor. The company logo caught her attention. The letter had been left openly on the entry table instead of inside the mailbox. She glanced at the return address before placing it with the rest of the mail. Printed across the corner was a project status notice: deposit pending. Construction not yet scheduled. Lorraine's heart sank. The renovation hadn't been delayed. It hadn't even begun. That night, Adrian sat at the kitchen island eating a takeout sandwich, while Bianca scrolled through emails on her tablet. Lorraine quietly joined them with a glass of water and a small notebook. She spoke gently. "So, Adrian, how is the kitchen renovation coming along?" He swallowed before answering. "It's moving slower than expected." "I see." "The permits are taking forever," he added quickly. "The contractor says these things happen." Lorraine wrote a single line in her notebook. Then she looked back at him. "When do you expect everything to be finished?" "Probably by the end of summer." Another lie. She could hear it in his voice. Bianca didn't even bother looking up from her screen. "Construction always takes longer than people expect." Lorraine simply nodded. "I understand." No accusations. No raised voices. No dramatic confrontation. She quietly closed the notebook and excused herself. Upstairs, she sat beside the bedroom window for a long time. She remembered the little boy Adrian had once been. He had cried after accidentally breaking a neighbor's window because he couldn't bear hiding the truth. Now he lied effortlessly to protect his own comfort. That realization hurt more deeply than Bianca's disrespect ever could. The next morning, Lorraine drove to Washington Park. She wandered slowly through the rose gardens, breathing in the fragrance of hundreds of blooming flowers. Nature had always helped her think clearly. She asked herself one simple question: how had kindness slowly become permission for others to take advantage of her? The answer arrived before she reached the end of the path, because she had never insisted on boundaries. She had mistaken endless patience for love. This time would be different. When Lorraine returned home that afternoon, she gathered several important folders from her office. property records, UNICE bills, insurance documents. Estate papers. She placed them neatly on the dining room table and organized every page with the precision she had practiced during 40 years as an accountant. Nothing would be decided in anger. Everything would be decided with facts. As she finished arranging the papers, she looked around the room that had once hosted birthdays, holidays, and family celebrations. Soon, an honest conversation would take place at that very table, and when it ended, nothing inside this house would ever be the same again. Late Friday afternoon, Adrian came downstairs after finishing a remote meeting. He stopped when he saw Lorraine sitting at the dining table. The folders she had arranged were stacked neatly beside a notepad, and every document was perfectly aligned. Her calm expression reminded him of the countless evenings she had spent reviewing financial reports during her years as an accountant. Bianca entered the room moments later, carrying a mug of coffee. She glanced at the paperwork and sighed dramatically. "What's all this?" Lorraine gestured toward the empty chairs. "I'd like both of you to sit down. We need to talk." Adrian obeyed immediately, though his shoulders were tense. Bianca remained standing for a moment before reluctantly taking a seat across from Lorraine. The room was quiet. Lorraine folded her hands. "When you moved in, you told me your kitchen renovation would take 3 weeks. Adrian nodded without speaking. "I believed you because I trusted you." Neither of them responded. "Yesterday I learned that your contractor hasn't even begun the project because the initial deposit hasn't been paid." Bianca's eyes widened. "You looked at our mail?" Lorraine shook her head. The notice was left on the table beside the front door. Anyone walking through the house could have seen it. Bianca crossed her arms. "That's still none of your business. It became my business the moment your unfinished plans extended your stay in my home without an honest conversation." Silence settled over the table. Lorraine looked at Adrian. "Would you like to tell me the truth?" He stared at his hands for several long seconds. Finally, he sighed. "We decided to postpone the renovation." "We?" Lorraine asked. Adrian nodded. "It seemed smarter financially. So instead of discussing it with me, you chose to let me believe you would be leaving in a few weeks." His voice was barely audible. "Yes." Lorraine closed the folder in front of her. "I appreciate your honesty now." Bianca leaned forward. "I don't understand why this is such a big issue. We're family." Lorraine met her gaze. "Family doesn't build relationships on deception." Bianca frowned. "We weren't hurting anyone." Lorraine remained composed. "You asked me to spend my birthday alone in my bedroom." The younger woman's expression hardened. "That was one evening. It revealed far more than you realize." Adrian shifted uncomfortably. "Mom." Lorraine gently raised her hand. "I've made a decision." Both of them looked at her. "You have 2 weeks to make other living arrangements." The words hung in the air. Bianca blinked. "What?" "Your stay will end on the 15th. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Bianca laughed in disbelief. "You're serious?" "I am. This is ridiculous." "No," Lorraine replied evenly. "Allowing myself to be treated like a guest in my own home was ridiculous. That ends today." Bianca looked toward Adrian. "Are you really going to let this happen?" He remained silent. And Lorraine noticed it immediately, the same silence, the same unwillingness to make difficult choices. She stood and gathered the documents into a neat stack. "I hope you'll use these next 2 weeks wisely." Without another word, she carried the folders upstairs. The days that followed felt strangely peaceful. Lorraine no longer waited for approval before living her own life. She contacted a local catering company and confirmed plans for a dinner she had postponed after her birthday. This time, the gathering wasn't about marking another year of life. It was about celebrating friendships that had lasted decades. She invited several retired coworkers who had stood beside her through countless challenges. She also transformed her bright sunroom into a private reading retreat. Her favorite velvet chair was moved beside the windows overlooking the garden. Shelves filled with novels surrounded the room, and fresh flowers rested on a small wooden table. The space felt entirely her own. Meanwhile, tension continued growing downstairs. Bianca spent hours searching rental listings online, complaining loudly about prices. I can't believe what apartments cost around here, she muttered one evening. Lorraine simply continued reading. A few nights later, Adrian quietly knocked on the sunroom door. Can we talk? Lorraine closed her book. Of course. He stepped inside and looked around the peaceful room. I've been calling landlords all day, he admitted. There are options. They're expensive. They usually are. He sat across from her. Would you consider giving us another month? Lorraine looked at her son with genuine sadness. Adrian, this isn't about money. I know. It's about respect. He lowered his head. I should have spoken up that night. Yes. I should have told Bianca she was wrong. Yes, I just didn't want another argument. Lorraine smiled sadly. And your silence became its own decision. He couldn't deny it. The 15th still stands? He asked quietly. She nodded. The 15th still stands. Adrian slowly rose from his chair. For the first time in years, he understood that some broken trust couldn't be repaired with apologies alone. Some lessons required consequences. As the 15th drew closer, Lorraine noticed a change in the atmosphere inside the house. The tense silence had been replaced by quiet desperation. Adrian spent every evening searching for apartments online, while Bianca complained constantly about rising rents and limited availability. Lorraine listened without commenting. She had made her decision, and she refused to be pulled into another emotional debate. Instead, she devoted her attention to something that brought her genuine happiness, her long-awaited dinner with her retired colleagues. She finalized the menu with the catering company, choosing roasted salmon with lemon butter, herb-crusted beef tenderloin, seasonal vegetables, fresh bread, and elegant desserts. She selected several bottles of fine wine and ordered floral centerpieces for the dining table. This gathering represented more than a meal. It was a celebration of independence, friendship, and the life she had built through decades of determination. Every afternoon she polished the silverware, arranged fresh flowers, and prepared the house to welcome guests who valued both her company and her kindness. Meanwhile, Bianca grew increasingly irritated. One evening she watched Lorraine arranging place cards around the dining table. So, you're really going through with this dinner? Lorraine smiled warmly. I certainly am. Bianca folded her arms. It seems unnecessary to spend so much money. Lorraine looked at her calmly. I enjoy hosting people who appreciate being invited. Bianca's expression darkened. She turned away without another word. Thursday morning arrived. Lorraine came downstairs carrying a basket of freshly folded linens. She stopped immediately. Large floral arrangements filled the entryway. Several unopened cases of expensive wine lined the hallway. Boxes containing presentation boards and promotional materials were stacked against the dining room wall. Bianca walked into the foyer wearing business clothes, speaking into a wireless headset. She ended the call and smiled. Oh, good. You're awake. Lorraine looked around the room. What is all this? My regional team is coming tonight, Bianca answered casually. Lorraine frowned. Tonight? Yes. I thought my dinner was tomorrow evening. Bianca nodded. It is. So why are all these things here? My coworkers need to prepare for tomorrow's strategy meeting. She pointed toward the dining room. They'll be working here tonight and staying through tomorrow evening. Lorraine remained silent. Bianca continued. So you'll have to cancel your dinner. Lorraine blinked once. I'm sorry. Bianca offered a confident smile. There simply won't be enough space. She glanced around the beautifully decorated dining room. Maybe you could meet your friends at a restaurant instead. Lorraine studied her for several seconds. The confidence, the certainty, the complete belief that she would once again surrender her own plans. Bianca truly expected history to repeat itself. She believed Lorraine would avoid confrontation, apologize to her friends, and quietly disappear into the background exactly as she had on her birthday. But this wasn't her birthday anymore, and Lorraine wasn't the same woman. Without saying another word, she turned and walked upstairs. Inside her bedroom, she closed the door and sat beside her desk. She picked up her phone. Her first call was to the catering company. Good morning, she said pleasantly. I need to make a small adjustment to tomorrow's event. After several minutes, every detail had been confirmed. She thanked the manager and ended the call. Her second call was to a local moving company. She reserved a truck for Saturday morning. The representative confirmed the booking before wishing her a pleasant day. Lorraine smiled. "So will I," she replied quietly. She placed the phone back on the desk. There was no anger inside her, only certainty. Downstairs, Bianca continued directing workers as if nothing had changed. She had no idea the decisions Lorraine had just made, nor did Adrian. That evening, Adrian knocked softly on Lorraine's bedroom door. "Mom?" She opened it. "I just wanted to check on you. I'm perfectly fine." He hesitated. "I know Bianca can be difficult." Lorraine gave him a gentle smile. "Adrian, tomorrow will settle everything." He searched her face. "What does that mean? You'll understand soon enough." He looked worried but didn't ask another question. As he walked away, Lorraine glanced toward the framed family photographs on her dresser. One picture showed Adrian as a smiling little boy proudly holding the keys to the bicycle she had saved months to buy him. Back then, he had always run toward her when he was frightened. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped standing beside the people who loved him most. Tomorrow would force him to choose, not between his wife and his mother, but between convenience and integrity. Lorraine switched off the bedroom light and looked out the window. The house was quiet. The next evening would change everything. And this time, she would not surrender her place in the home she had worked so hard to build. Friday evening arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze drifting through the open windows of Lorraine's bungalow. She dressed carefully in her favorite navy blue silk dress, fastened a simple pearl necklace around her neck, and took one last look at the dining room she had spent days preparing. Fresh flowers decorated the center of the mahogany table, candles waited to be lit, and soft music played in the background. At exactly 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Lorraine welcomed her first guests with a warm smile. 4 retired colleagues stepped inside carrying flowers, homemade pastries, and small birthday gifts they had been unable to give her weeks earlier. Their cheerful greetings filled the house with genuine warmth. Almost at the same moment, another wave of visitors arrived. Bianca's co-workers entered through the front door, dressed in business suits, carrying laptops, presentation folders, and overnight bags. Within seconds, the foyer became crowded with 2 very different groups of people. Bianca walked out of the kitchen wearing an elegant cocktail dress. Seeing her manager arrive behind the others, she smiled confidently before noticing Lorraine's guests. Her smile faded. "Oh," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Lorraine, I thought we discussed this yesterday." Lorraine remained calm. Bianca folded her arms. "My team needs this space tonight. There isn't enough room for everyone." The foyer grew quiet, then Bianca delivered the sentence that immediately caught everyone's attention. "Why don't you and your friends have dinner upstairs in your bedroom? You'll be much more comfortable there." A heavy silence followed. Lorraine's friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, while Bianca's co-workers looked at one another in confusion. Adrian stood beside the coat rack, his face turning pale. He recognized those words. They were almost identical to the ones Bianca had spoken on Lorraine's birthday. Lorraine slowly stepped forward. Her voice remained steady. "Bianca, before we continue, I'd like everyone here to understand something." Every eye turned toward her. "This house belongs to me." No one interrupted. "I welcomed Adrian and Bianca because they told me they needed temporary help while their kitchen was being renovated." She paused briefly. "Instead, I was asked to celebrate my birthday alone in my bedroom so someone else's guests could enjoy my dining room." Several members of Bianca's team shifted uncomfortably. Lorraine continued. "I also recently learned that the renovation had never begun, despite repeated assurances that it was already underway." Bianca's confident expression disappeared. "That's enough," she whispered urgently. Lorraine shook her head. "No, it isn't." Just then, the catering staff arrived through the side entrance with trays of freshly prepared food. Lorraine greeted the manager politely. "Thank you for coming." She turned toward everyone gathered in the foyer. "My friends and I will be enjoying our dinner exactly as planned." Then she looked directly at Bianca. "As for you and Adrian," she took a slow breath, "your move-out date has arrived." Bianca stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "I've arranged for a moving company to arrive tomorrow morning." Adrian closed his eyes. He knew there was nothing left to argue. Bianca looked toward her manager. "This is just a misunderstanding." The manager cleared his throat awkwardly. "I think our meeting would be better held at the office." One by one, Bianca's co-workers quietly excused themselves. Within minutes, every one of them had left the house. The expensive wine remained unopened. The presentation boards leaned untouched against the wall. The silence that followed felt overwhelming. Bianca stood motionless. For the first time since moving into Lorraine's home, she had no words. Saturday morning arrived quietly. The moving truck pulled into the driveway just before noon. Professional movers loaded boxes of clothing, furniture, office equipment, and personal belongings into the truck while Adrian carried the final bags outside. Bianca remained inside the car, refusing to leave her seat. When everything had been packed, Adrian walked back to the front porch. He looked exhausted. More than that, he looked ashamed. "Mom." Lorraine opened the front door. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I should have defended you from the beginning." She nodded gently. "You should have. I kept choosing the easier path. And every time you did, someone else carried the burden." He lowered his head. "I don't expect you to forgive me today." Lorraine stepped closer. "I'll always love you, Adrian." He looked up hopefully. "But love doesn't erase consequences." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I understand. You'll always be welcome to visit me." She smiled softly. "As a respectful guest," he nodded. "I'll earn that privilege." Lorraine hugged her son briefly before watching him walk toward the waiting car. A few moments later, the vehicle disappeared around the corner. The house became wonderfully quiet. Lorraine walked through each room, opening windows and letting the fresh Oregon breeze carry away the heaviness that had lingered for weeks. She returned to the dining room and gently ran her hand across the polished mahogany table. For the first time in a long while, the house truly felt like home again. She poured herself a fresh cup of coffee, sat beside the window overlooking her garden, and smiled peacefully. Some people believe strength is found in raising your voice. Lorraine had learned something different. Real strength comes from knowing your worth, setting firm boundaries, and refusing to let anyone diminish your dignity, even if that person is someone you love. As the afternoon sunlight filled every corner of her home, Lorraine realized she hadn't simply reclaimed her house, she had reclaimed herself.